Hello, folks. Come on down. The site of Musquetaquid and Earth Day, and the Green Man is here to introduce my candidate. I'm Rick Beinecke. I'm a volunteer coordinating Niki's campaign here in Concord for the next 6 months, the next 5 years, whatever it takes. I first got to know the Tsonguses back in '86 when Paul and I were going through chemotherapy. We had doctors who knew each other, and I was incredibly impressed by her, Niki, and the family as they were going through a similar experience as I was going through at the time. I've followed her career since. I think most of you kind of know her background. She's been a lawyer, a real advocate, many aboard up in Lowell. Kids went to school here. If you look at the issues, I mean, whether it be the environment or the Iraq War or education, I teach at Suffolk, so I appreciate her education background. In other words, in my view, great candidate, and very quickly, Sarah Compton, wherever you are, somehow got me involved, and the rest is history, and I've been spending all my free time working for this wonderful lady. So I hope you'll support her. If you aren't sure, I hope you'll get to know her. She's great on the issues, and hopefully she can talk a little bit, and then you guys can have a real chance to mingle and get talking and share with her the issues that you folks are really concerned about. With that, I hand it to the next congressional candidate, not candidate, but the woman in Congress going to Washington.
Thank you. Thanks, Rick, for that great green introduction. Wow. We had an announcement this morning in Lowell, Massachusetts, and this is the upriver announcement. Because as you know, the Concord River connects the American Revolution with the Industrial Revolution. When I was I am still a dean at Middlesex Community College, I would come out of the front door. It's in the Old Wang Training Center, which is right in the heart of the city. When I would come out of the front door of the Old Wang Training Center, which is now Middlesex Community College, the Concord River comes down right there and it flows into the Merrimack. So the Concord connects the American Revolution with the Industrial Revolution, and then it flows into the Merrimack and goes upriver to Haverhill, or downriver to Haverhill and Lawrence. So it's a remarkable historic district. And it's historic in other ways in that it elected the first woman from Massachusetts ever to go to Congress, Edith Norris Rogers. So it has a long history. Who am I? Well, I'm Niki Tsongus, and I am running for Congress. Yay! I'm taking the next step on a lifetime path of change. Experience has taught me that sometimes change happens to you, and sometimes you must make it happen. The one thing I do know is that I cannot do it alone, and that is why I'm here today to ask for your support. I'm running for Congress because our country is on the wrong course in so many ways, and we need change. I'm here ready to lead that change. I'm running to change a policy of folly in Iraq. We have prosecuted a war without a strategy, exposed our servicemen and women to danger without adequate armor and equipment, and shuffled the wounded to medical facilities that are unsanitary and understaffed. I just came from a veterans clinic in Lowell because as part of this day I am going around and trying to just find out how people are living their lives in very different ways. And it is clear that for many who serve in behalf of our country, that service is a life-changing event from which they never recover. And it is our obligation to understand when we send people into war that we have a lifetime commitment to taking care of those who come back harmed in one way or another. I'm the product of a proud military family. My father, an Air Force colonel, survived the bombing of Pearl Harbor and devoted his entire career to military service. While growing up, we lived on bases throughout the country and the world, including Germany and Japan. There I learned the values of sacrifice, self-reliance, and service. It was a time when we were respected around the globe. I can remember being in Japan when John Kennedy died, and the Japanese people mourning with us. It was quite a remarkable thing. And also there's intense interest in absorbing our culture. And we're talking about post-war Japan. So they were already looking to us for our leadership. It was also a time when our country welcomed its veterans with the GI Bill and not the warehousing of wounded soldiers that we see today. We must recapture that sense of gratitude to those who fight on our behalf. We need to end the war in Iraq. Bring our courageous young men and women home quickly and safely, and care for those who return. This is our moral obligation. In Congress, I will champion nothing less. We also need to run to make our country more secure. My father was the military officer that he was, said you don't know what a good defense is until you don't have it. And I think tragically we learned on 9/11 and again in Hurricane Katrina, that we do not have a good defense, and we need to invest in our first responders, which are our police, our firefighters, and our emergency response teams. In Congress, I will work to do just that. And I'm running to change an attitude of neglect that leaves 47 million Americans without basic health care, including 1 out of every 10 children in our country. As you know, I'm not a stranger to this issue any more than Rick is, and I understand the fear and helplessness that many feel when faced with illness in their family. And I think that I've experienced the hope our healthcare has to offer, and shudder to think what that experience might have been if our family had been uninsured. And as a leader on a nonprofit health board, I'm on the board of a small health plan in Worcester, I've seen the challenges and solutions that we can provide. We can provide affordable and accessible health care. We need health care coverage for every American, and we need it now. And there are those who would ignore the need for change, regardless of the cost to future generations. And I'm running because this administration is in denial about global warming, to our peril and its great shame. I will work to set limits on greenhouse gas emissions, hold polluters accountable, and make our district a leader in the development of alternative energy. And it's great to be in a community like Concord, where you're so far ahead of the curve and where you have done such a good job in preserving so many of our natural assets. As I said, I was also just at I went to Bill Ricker, where I saw Project Beam, which is an early intervention program for special needs children. And now I'm here to talk about global warming and the environment. In both instances, we have an administration that is engaged in denial and neglect and indifference, and we need a change. So finally, I'm continuing to help the 5th Congressional District has a great legacy of economic development, being committed to its communities in so many ways, being committed to revitalization of its cities, being committed to investing in research and development. And I run knowing that that will be one of the great challenges, one of the great opportunities of this seat. And I look forward to serving in your behalf and ask for your support. I've lived here for 35 years. I can't tell you how many times I have traveled Lowell Road, whether it was to get Molly Tsongus or whether it was to get Katina Tsongus, who are going to school here. I've always marveled at the beauty of your community and your capacity to preserve your historic riches here, both in terms of your buildings, but also in terms of your great natural resources, your beautiful open fields. I've always thought it was a real testament to what can happen when people are so committed to their environment. I'm also here to find out from you about what's on your mind. So I look forward to going to Washington. I understand the challenges of getting elected. I take nothing for granted. I plan to work hard every day to earn your vote. And right now, I'd like to kind of turn it over to you and hear what's on your mind, because as much as this day is about me announcing, it's also about hearing from all of you, because one thing I have learned as I've gone around again in this capacity is you need to get out and hear from people. And if you don't do that, you've missed one of the tremendous opportunities to really learn how people are living their lives and what's important to them. And if elected, I'll come back, because as much as we go to Washington to enact policy, often our policies don't work. They have kind of an impact we didn't intend, and we need to hear that so we can change them and modify them. So right now I'm going to turn it over to you all to hear it from you, and I'm happy to pass the mic. And be brave.
What's on your mind?
But tell me what's on your mind. May not have an answer as much as anything. I want to hear how important, what you think needs to be done.
I'd like to hear more about your thoughts on global warming and what to do about it specifically. What thoughts do you have about where we should be going in the next few years?
Well, I think we have to, first of all, I think there's a consensus. We have a real opportunity with the Democratic Congress. I think the science is clear on this. I don't think we should engage in any more debates about whether it's happening or isn't happening. Over the years, I could come by here and see the banks of the Concord come up and go down. I don't think I ever attributed it to global warming in particular. I think that was more cyclical, but in Lowell, Massachusetts, I now live in an old mill that's on the banks of the Merrimack River, and this building has been flooded twice in the past year, and it's in a 100-year flood zone. So I think the evidence is there that whether you could say that's about global warming or not. So I think we need to put a cap on emissions. We need to make polluters pay through a cap and trade system, and we need to invest in alternative energy technologies. And we have an opportunity to make that a win-win in this district because we have so many people who are experts in those fields. I visited Ballard, which is a small company in Lowell, Massachusetts, and it creates a carbon filter that GM uses in some of its hydrogen fuel cell engines. And there are businesses like that all over this district, sort of investing in those things and trying to make a difference. So in a broad sense, that is where I would start. There's some interesting legislation being filed. When I get there, I'm going to go for the one that makes a difference in the quick. We don't have a lot of time. That's a great travesty of the Bush administration. They've left us with very little time.
Yes, a few in the audience know I'm very concerned about invasive alien plants. The federal government has done nothing, the state government done nothing about making it illegal to have these growing on your property. Your district, the greater district is often known as Thorough Country. And I think we need to have someplace in America draw a line in the sand and through all property, private, government, state parks, Audubon sanctuaries, to in a 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 year period to make it illegal to have invasive alien plants in your property and to weed America, to bring back the native plants and animals that we're about to lose with all the Phragmites, the Oriental bittersweet, and so many other things, the garlic mustard. Thorough Country's in deep, deep, long-term trouble, and somewhere this would be a great opportunity to have Concord and your district take the lead to attract state and federal money to experimentally weed this stuff out as best we can, using some judicious use of herbicide. Our country, our Thorough Country, is under attack right now, and we're not getting leadership from the federal and state government to really enact the battle.
I'd be happy to talk with you about that. I have to say, when, 20 years ago, when you first started to see the purple loosestrife all along the roads, I thought, oh, isn't it beautiful? And now, unfortunately, we can't. I mean, it may be beautiful, but does that qualify as an invasive?
It sure is.
Yeah. So I can remember once we had some sort of event at the house, and I thought, oh, there's so many free plants out there. I think I'll go cut them and pull over on the highway and get them. But I got out, it didn't last too long because I thought someone was going to come along and arrest me. But nevertheless, I understand your point. I need to learn more about it. But clearly, you hear and read much more about those kinds of
The battle
concerns.
should begin here.
You're right. I mean, one of the things we know, and whether it's on this very small issue or on very not so small, but this issue or others, is that there's power and great purpose in public office. And whether it's addressing an issue like that, or whether it's trying to revitalize a city, or whether it's trying to invest in new technologies that will bring an end to our dependence on foreign oil, that if the great power of public office is put to purpose that solves those problems, we can really make a difference. We can make a difference in a community, we can make a difference in a nation, and we can make a difference around the world. So when I hear those kinds of things, it's not something idle and passing. It's like to make our cities work. I mean, there you have it all. It's you have all those buildings that are all in concentrated areas. You have access, generally speaking, to public transportation, and the historic communities of New England need to make our cities work, because otherwise you're going to be sprawled to death. And so the smart growth activity really is in response to seeing that happen. So fundamentally, I start with making the cities work, dealing with these kinds of issues you're talking about on a more local basis. And I think there's beginning to emerge some understanding of how important it is. You cannot drive down the street at any time without seeing yet another little piece of undeveloped land with a attractive homes coming up. They're lovely homes. Who wouldn't want to live here? But I think it's something to preserve the landscape that you all in Concord call home. It's going to take important and significant action. And for someone who comes out of the cities, I see making them look at all the young people moving now to cities, because we're taking these old mills and converting them into condos, and they're more affordable and they're close to public transportation. And and a lot of what you see is really building around transportation centers and those kinds of things out here. So you're right, it's important, and we need to encourage it at every level. Jane?
You have 3 remarkable young daughters that are involved in trying to take care of their community, and I keep thinking about their generation and what they're dealing with. They're dealing with an international community that feels negatively about their country. They're learning about global warming in their schools, and yet they're trying to reconcile that somehow this has been placed on them. I'm wondering how you're going to reach to that youthful community and give them hope and inspiration, and also legislation that they can, foster and make this community and district work for them.
Well, first of all, I have to listen to them. I have to tell you on the whole issue, and we all have to listen to our young people, just as one of my first political campaigns in life was to go to New Hampshire and work for Eugene McCarthy. And my father, who, as I said, was a military officer, never uttered a word, protest or whatever, because I think he listened to me and felt that what I was doing as a young person was important and reflected a value about trying to make a difference more than about the statement of being for or against a war, but he was against it as well. So you have to listen to our children. I have to say I'm not proud that about 4 or 5 years ago I bought a new car and drove it into the driveway, and it was a Grand Cherokee. And Molly, my daughter over here, was aghast. So I've never driven that car with any pleasure since, but I felt I had to pay for it first. So I think we have to listen to our children and respond to them. I think clearly our young people are against the war in Iraq. I think bringing that to an end in a concerted fashion and demonstrating that we care about what the world thinks about us, demonstrating that we care about our veterans, teaching compassion, I think is the most important thing. I think being engaged in the world and understanding the nature of a global economy, as well as being comfortable with different cultures. I have to say, growing up in a city like Lowell or Boston or any of the New England towns teaches that because you're around people who have come from all over the world every day. So I'm happy to see my kids. I said, how did they absorb all this? And it really wasn't because anybody was didactic about what you have to do. It was that we just brought them along, brought them to things like this where they see the power of office and what you can do if you want to make a difference, and to encourage young people to get engaged, as we all did. I mean, as I say, I was 21 when I was in my first campaign, and they haven't been so much. Molly was actually a little younger, because you may know her as a young woman who sat in a tree right down this road. And Ashley, who served in the Peace Corps in Madagascar and now works for Oxfam America. I think we have to lead by example. I mean, truly, I think, I can't imagine the example George Bush is to his children. You have a world that's suffering from global warming. His children and grandchildren have to live in that world. So at some point, I think we have to lead by example and address the problems that we know are going to affect future generations more than they're going to affect us.
I have another issue which has an but it goes with opposite of global warming is my concern for the continuance of trains and public transportation and more of it, so that people will feel okay about getting on a bus and going somewhere or whatever, because I think it will save some economy, fuel economy.
I cannot tell you how hard it is to find an American hybrid. So the fact that Detroit is so far behind the 8 ball in this really is astonishing. So in Congress, I think whatever we have to do to compel Detroit to move forward. But again, at this company, Ballard, when I was talking to them about this carbon filter they create, they do this for GM. They're the sole source for GM, and they are hearing so much from GM now because GM is so concerned at the level that they're going to be dealing with emission standards that they're scrambling. They're absolutely scrambling. So it shows you how government can make a real impact.
Given how complex the issue is in the Middle East and with the war in Iraq, what kind of strategy do you think you would support for an exit strategy there? And then once we exit, we all know that it's not going to be a perfect situation. How do we restore America in the eyes of the world and the Middle East? How can we look like a country with wisdom and empathy and honesty one more time? How can that happen?
Well, I think we have to elect a Democratic president, plain and simple. I mean, I think the longer we continue with the Republican administration, the harder it will be to do that, because the history and the legacy is so entrenched. In terms of an exit strategy, I support, setting a withdrawal date, continuing to put pressure on the president. I applaud Nancy Pelosi and the Democratic Congress for moving this issue forward. Because without them, I don't think we'd be having the discussions we are today. And I think it's important, no more blank checks, as Rahm Emanuel says. But I think going forward, we're going to have to engage the bordering countries and the international community in developing a political solution in dealing with how to bring all the players to the table and deal with the civil war that essentially is in existence over there. But long term, we have to make sure that there is stability in that region, but clearly war is not the answer. And the sun is coming out. Anybody else?
I was glad to hear you talk about changing existing policy, modifying existing policy. And I think about No Child Left Behind, because communities like Concord don't leave children. And it creates incredible requirements, regulations that we have to deal with, and takes away resources that we could use elsewhere. And so I just wondered where you were on that.
Well, I support No Child Left Behind, but I don't support an unfunded version of No Child Left Behind. I think residents of Concord are fortunate to have a tremendous educational system. That is not necessarily the case in many of the cities. They struggle with very different kinds of issues. So I think No Child Left Behind forms an important function, but I think we have to fully fund it, because without that, it does place quite a burden on communities. And that being said, I think as we go forward, we might have to look at communities where, and this is true on lots of levels, but just kind of take a look at, are there places where it is very, very important, and others where maybe not so. But generally speaking, I'm fully supportive of No Child Left Behind, as long as it's fully funded.
I'm wondering what your ideas might be on linking business with education. And we talked about youth before in terms of global warming and supporting green industries, and even taking existing industries and transforming them. What kinds of links might there be?
I'm sure there's ample opportunity there. One of the things I've learned at Middlesex Community College is the very important role that higher education can play in workforce development and creating bringing young people in and making sure that they are being trained for the jobs of the future. I've also seen the incredible linkage between UMass Lowell, and I think that's because it's the major university within this 5th district, and creating new technologies that lead to new jobs. I can't tell you how many companies I've been to where Were it not for the university, they might not be here, either because they are hiring engineers out of the school, or they are piggybacking on some of the research that's being done at the university. I went to a company that gets some funding through the Department of Defense, and they are in the plastics industry, and they are creating, for example, goggles. Many of the troops in Iraq have a certain kind of goggle that they wear, and because the plastic lens does not adjust quickly when they go from light to dark, they take off the lens and suffers very serious eye wounds. So this company is in the business of changing the plastic lens so that it adapts more quickly. The troops leave it on, and their eyes are protected. All of the research came right out of the university. So to the extent that funding will be going to the UMass system and coming in through Lowell, that means there are going to be ample opportunities around the biotech sector for those additional kinds of jobs. But again, then you have to be prepared to train young people to do the jobs that we need to do. So investing in science, technology, math, and engineering is going to be ever more key. And I would want to be sure that young women are as comfortable in those fields as young men, because if that is where major growth is going to take place, women need to have equal opportunity to those jobs.
I'm wondering about how you feel about war profiteering and how we can, if our government continues to support war profiteering, there will always be war. But I wonder how you think about the government actually outlawing profiteering from the wars and maybe having make a 10% profit instead of these billions of dollars that are being stolen from our government and from our country.
I don't think anybody should ever make a lot of money off of war. I
But
don't.
currently, this is why we have wars, because we do make money.
I think the decision to go to war is a very complicated one, and so it's something one has to give great thought to. But I will say this, just again, that same company where I visited that I talked about, the plastic lens, their funding comes out of the Department of Defense, and clearly the money is being spent on materials that have war application, but they also have important commercial and civil application. So drawing the distinction and trying to separate out those kinds of benefits, I think, is always a difficult one. And yet I think it would be important to know and look to make sure that in every instance where something is purely related to war, whether or not there is something good that comes of it for other purposes. I mean, I think this is true in many, many instances, but I understand your concern. I want to thank you all for coming here. It's a great honor to seek representation from a community such as Concord that has made such a difference in the life of this country and in the life of this district. I take it very seriously, my representation, should I be elected, and I look forward to having an open door and working with you in the future on all the things that are so important to you. You're a leader in so many ways. I think particularly on issues of importance to the environment, and it's a real pleasure, actually, to represent you. Hopefully, to represent you. Thank you.
As Niki's Concord leader working for Sarah and other folks who are my current new bosses, if you are at all interested in working with us, we are currently making a lot of phone calls. They're easy phone calls. We're just trying to find out where people stand. I can tell you that of the roughly 500 phone calls we've made so far, we have only found one person who either does not support Niki or who is neutral. So if they're easy phone calls to make, that may, we don't get our hopes up, but it's encouraging. If you're at all interested, again, there's going to be lots of opportunities to get involved in various ways, whether it be door-to-door, mailings, get your kids out, sign holding, whatever it is. Please make sure that one of the people here you've signed up with, no commitment, but it does put you on a list that will keep you posted on what we're up to. Certainly, I live around the corner here. Many people know my wife, Deb, who's another great environmental activist, and the various folks here. But if you, again, want to get involved, please be in touch with us, and let's move ahead and make sure we have a great woman in Congress. Thank you.
you. And